style chase, but a development of that. So please welcome from the right-hand side, the Strikemaster pair. Now, just to demonstrate their connectivity back to frontline combat use, mainly in the Middle East, there will be some additional bangs during the course of this one, so just take that as a warning order now for those of you that need to know that. And as I say, they'll go through a couple of formation pairs work, and yeah, I think you've learnt a bit about that now. A lot of practice goes into that, so of course the leader making sure that the flight parameters fits all the right speeds, locations, and of course heights as well. And then the wingman, in this case Ollie Suckling, a serving Royal Air Force pilot, doing absolutely everything he can to replicate all the inputs from the leader in front of him. The jet provost went through several iterations in its life, having first flown in 1954 out of Luton. The Air Ministry, as it was at the time, ordered 40 of the Mark IIIs, aircraft. I'm dating myself because that's the aircraft I first trained on, but fitted with the Sydney Armstrong Siddeley Viper jets, the one you hear right now, with ejector seats and a redesigned airframe. Pulling up a very neat pairs formation there. Total, over 200 of the T3s were delivered right up until 1962, but it was really the pressurized Mark V version that led us into what you're now seeing, which was the armed export version of the Mark V, which turned into the Strikemaster. These two aircraft you see in SOAF registration and RSAF, representing both the Sultan of Oman's and the Royal Saudi Air Force, the Mark 82As of the Sultan of Oman's and the Mark 80As of the Royal Saudi Air Force. Both the aircraft belonging to the Strikemaster Flying Club, based at not far away, just down the coast here to the south, to the North Wales headland, just south of Liverpool, based at Harden in North Wales, part of the North Wales Military Aviation Services Limited company there. And the aircraft imported by Mark in 2004 from Oman. You will have already seen the immaculate colour schemes on both the aircraft. And once the Mark V had been developed, it was turned into an armed export version, going to Sri Lanka, Kuwait and Sudan, and then armed with 7.7 machine guns as well. Ollie just putting in a neat little line astern roll there. Coming round now for what they call the strikey split. Additionally, the aircraft were also sold to Iraq, South Yemen, Sudan and Venezuela. And the final armed export version sold on to Sudan, but that was subject to an arms embargo, and one of these, the leading aircraft here, was actually the result of that through a requirement by Oman for an additional replacement aircraft. Barrel roll there, we've described that before, basically flying around the outside of a very large beer barrel. The Strikemaster, therefore, a combat derivative of the JP Mark V. Very tough aircraft with an armoured cockpit. The single but robust Viper engine, much maligned, and frequently, as you can guess, quite noisy. The lead aircraft, actually the youngest of all the Strikemasters ever produced, celebrating only around 33 years or so of service. Bringing back round to crowd centre now. There you go, as promised. On target, the strikey split. All those commands coming from Mark. You may detect a slight Canadian lilt there. It's because he was born across there, moving back to UK in the 70s and joining the Royal Air Force. He flew a variety of different aircraft and now got a huge amount of experience, having flown the Chipmunk, the Jet Provost, the Hawk, the Phantom and Tornado F3, and now co-owning and operating these aircraft. Also working part-time for an international airline. Ollie, meanwhile, continuing his duties as a Royal Air Force instructor just a bit further down the coast at Royal Air Force Valley. Going head-to-head now, coming left and right. Another good photo opportunity about now. Now entering what they call the carousel. And towards the end of this, they'll go into a few strafing runs when we may just get a bit of special effects out there on the beach as well. So now keeping a tally on each other. Of course, that smoke also helping them get a clear, safe position as they come round into the second half to complete this carousel maneuver. Ollie also a tornado mate, as they say in the business. He spent time on that as well before going back to instructional duties. So the two aircraft now positioning, because these aircraft, being combat derivatives, surprisingly spent quite some time, of course, being involved in various conflicts around the world. And in this case, of course, we're referring to the Omani Wars and particularly the Mirbat campaign. And an opportunity now to get a feel for the sort of weaponry they would have been able to lay down on the ground. So, keep your eyes open now. They'll be checking their sights, checking the weapons are armed. And what we're expecting to see is, first of all, a strafing run from left to right, and then they'll come back armed with rockets for the second pass. Pretty neat bit of shooting there. We're talking about neutralizing enemy forces. That's a pretty good start. Neutralizing, all you need to do is stop them fighting you. You don't necessarily have to exterminate them completely, just to make sure that they are incapable of fighting back. That's enough to keep their heads down. These aircraft, of course, have manual controls, which makes the aircraft feel quite heavy flying at high speed, but it's still very maneuverable, but it reduces the risk of numerous hydraulic pipe work. Coming in there with advanced rocket attack, and we're followed with a couple of 500-pound bombs, I'm sure, as we go through that terrific scene. There they go. Oh, tremendous stuff. We're definitely getting in the thick of the action here. Just outstanding. Going now into the tail trace with a roll put into the middle of this as well. So, as you probably heard Mark just chatting away behind me there, going back out after this manoeuvre on what he calls the V-axis, and then coming in towards us. complete this sequence. Great speed range of this aircraft, anything between 100 knots and 400 knots, and capable of pulling up to about 5.5 G for the aerobatics, the loops and rolls. And what they like to do at the end here is come up, pull up together, get as much altitude as they can. That'll all depend whether Manchester will let them climb that high. But ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you've been watching Mark Petrie and Ollie Suckling in the Strikemaster pair, running in now for their final manoeuvre and pull up.
Hooray, up now!